Okay, so Hockey Psychology just put out a video today. You guys should go check it out. Honestly, it was a great video, a great watch. But basically, the parameters of it is Connor Bedard generational or is he not generational? Now, there are a lot of people hating on Connor Bedard. I saw a lot of people saying he's not generational, Celebrini's better in that comment section. There's a lot of praise for him as well. I'm going to give my side on the take. And spoiler alert, Connor Bedard is a generational prospect. Okay, so what is the main argument for Connor Bedard not being generational? Why is there this discourse? Because frankly, he's not producing at the same level as Crosby, Ovechkin. Well, Ovechkin's generational, obviously. I don't know. I wasn't alive in 2004, but I don't think he was. Maybe it's because he was Russian. I don't think he was as hyped up as Crosby and McDavid. I don't know if people saw him getting that good. So I'm just gonna, chill on the Ovechkin thing. I don't think, I'm just gonna chill for a bit. Okay, I'm gonna start off with the NBA here because we all know the NHL has been behind on everything since the inception of hockey, probably, so or at least since Gary's come to town. But so in the NBA, if you guys don't know, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, basically they are known as saved the NBA kind of thing, where the NBA was in dire need of superstars, the ABA was taken over, and then what happened was crazy. They got Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and everything was good. So now this isn't a direct comparison, but if Crosby and Ovechkin are Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, let's just say, for the purpose of painting a picture here, then Connor McDavid is Michael Jordan, right? Connor McDavid is Michael Jordan. Nathan McKinnon is Hakeem Olajuwon, and so on and so forth, right? Uh, you know, and then you have the 2001 Lakers, right? And there's a guy who, didn't wow you athletically, didn't have, had a couple traits that were good, nothing that was great. Now, Connor Bedard has one trait that was really good, his shot, like elite, but I think Connor Bedard lands in the Kobe Bryant category, where he is an all-time great. Is he generational? That's so debatable. Kobe is a generation of basketball. Is he a generational player? I wouldn't say so, but is he, did he define a generation? Yeah, hell yeah. So I think Connor Bedard lands in that category. He is generational prospect for sure. He's one of the greatest prospects we have ever seen. One of the most hyped prospects we have ever seen. Now, is he going to be McDavid? I don't think so. I think if you expected him to be better than McDavid, you're kind of an idiot. I don't think we'll see anyone better than McDavid for a while, like probably until our grandparents pass away and then we become, dads and moms and, whoever's watching this video, if there's still kids or robots by then, who knows. But we're going to have to wait a while to see somebody as good as McDavid. Okay, let's get to the hockey stuff. Connor Bedard, how did we get here? How is he generational? So obviously, Connor Bedard was the first ever player to get exceptional status into the WHL. Now I don't have the stats pulled up, but I do know he was a crazy prospect. People, Shane Wright just got exceptional status. People are saying he's going to be generational. I think fans, especially, hockey fans, are so impatient. They are ready to throw the next generational label on somebody to try and grow the game. Basketball is Wemby, right? Football, Patrick Mahomes. They're still kind of waiting for that next guy. Baseball, they had Shohei, right? Mike Trout. I don't know too much about baseball, but I'm sure there's a generational prospect coming up. So they really want to put Celebrini, Gavin McKenna, Maddox Schultz, all these random guys in the generational tier. There is two generational prospects in this decade. There's Connor Bedard, and then on defense there's Landon DuPont. And there's I wouldn't say as so far there's a goalie prospect who's reached those heights, but it's Gavin McKenna, it's Landon DuPont, and that is the end of the list. So two things. One, Connor Bedard definitely you know, his stock raised from the World Juniors. His World Junior performances, you know, nowadays in the NHL, everybody's talking about how important it is to have playoff players. You know, Sam Bennett's a top 10 center. You guys are idiots, okay? Just get your hockey card revoked. Sam Bennett's nowhere close to a top 10 center. I don't know if anybody said that. Maybe he's just, you know, rent free in my head. But, you know, Connor Bedard's World Junior performance was so elite. He is the best World Juniors player I've ever seen with my own eyes. Older fans might think differently. In my opinion, he's the best World Junior player I've ever seen with my own eyes. Right, and that's my opinion, so you really can't disagree. You can say I'm wrong, but you can't disagree with my own opinion, with my own eyes, with how long I've lived. You don't know how long I've lived, but and then the other thing is, I mean, in his final year, he scored 72 goals in 57 games. So, I mean, with the combination of those two, obviously the eye test, the numbers, you know, Mike Bartner's advanced stats, all that meaningless stuff, right? Connor Bedard was drafted first overall in the loaded 2023 draft. Now, what most people fail to remember was that there was another generational, I'm not even joking, generational prospect. Now, generational can mean different things. It can mean, you know, generational for a country like Roman Josi. It can mean generational in terms of the NHL. It can be, you know, once in a generational physical specimen. I can't even speak English anymore. And so there was a guy who was the second best Russian prospect in the 21st century, Matvey Michkov, right alongside Connor Bedard. And if that whole thing didn't happen and continue to happen, Matvey Michkov would have been second overall and challenging Connor Bedard for the first overall pick. So that was one factor I think that, you know, put more of a spotlight on Bedard that was necessarily needed. And also, fans were dying to find that next Connor McDavid. You know, Austin Matthews, generational for American standards. For Canadian players, I wouldn't say he's generational. Obviously, he's turned into one of the top 10, 5 best players in the NHL and one of the top, you know, 4, 3 goal scorers ever. So that's a pretty good pick right there. But then we had Nico Hischier. Obviously, Dahlin was elite for defensemen. I mean, Jack Hughes wasn't generational, obviously. Lafreniere was a very good prospect, but he fell in the McKenna, McKinnon, Matthews. There's a tier below these generational players. There's a reason they come around once in a generation. And some of them obviously surpassed that. Alex Ovechkin being a prime example. Nathan MacKinnon being a prime example. Nathan MacKinnon, I'd say he's a generational player because how many players in NHL history have produced at the rate he's produced, have been as talented as he is, has, you know, won a Stanley Cup at that young of an age. Yes, he has a great team around him. He didn't win a Conn Smythe. Doesn't matter. Nathan MacKinnon, you know, he showed that, like, don't give up on a guy, which is my next point for Connor Bedard. Don't give up. Nathan MacKinnon he was good. I wouldn't say he lived up to the first overall standards, you know, Memorial Cup standards that he set upon himself in the first couple years of his development. However, he has surpassed all expectations that Avalanche fans put upon him. Like, imagine you have a generational player in Connor McDavid and you have some guy on another team challenging him, like, in conversations with the best player. Like, Nathan MacKinnon may not be generational in terms of a prospect, but in terms of an NHL player, Nathan MacKinnon is a once in a, you know, Mario Lemieux. You know, is Mario Lemieux not generational because he was in the same era as Wayne Gretzky? I don't think that's fair. So it's like a weird category. I mean, if we go throughout NHL history, right, McDavid, obviously, Crosby, and, I mean, Ovechkin, you know, was he a generational prospect? I wasn't alive to know. Generational player, 100%, right? You know, you have McKinnon. I'd throw him in there. Cale Makar, you know, not a generational prospect, but a generational player. So a lot of these guys are generational players. Mario Lemieux was definitely generational because he scored like 300 points. However, was Wayne Gretzky supposed to be as good as he was? You know, he was a generational kid. He came from the WJHA or WHA. People said he was too small. You know, I'm not going to go that far back because obviously I'm talking out of my ass a little bit. But, you know, in terms of the players I've seen in my lifetime, Crosby, Ovechkin, McDavid, McKinnon, Connor Bedard Jr. was right up there with them. A tier ahead of Gavin McKenna, a tier ahead of, you know, Austin Matthews, a tier ahead of Nathan McKinnon as a prospect and in his first few years in the NHL. Connor Bedard's up there, man. Connor Bedard is still, I believe. As you can see, I just got yelled at, so I had to go do something. I didn't like get yelled at in a bad way. I just got called down. And I honestly forgot what I was talking about, so I'm going to pick it up somewhere completely different. One thing that I think fails to get mentioned with Connor Bedard is the fact that Connor Bedard doesn't have the luxury that a lot of these other players have had. So, not Alex Ovechkin, like I said. I'm just going to compare him to Crosby, McDavid. You know, maybe, you know, obviously, you know, I wasn't alive when Crosby got drafted, but I know the lore. They drafted Geno Malkin second overall the year before. They drafted Marc-Andre Fleury first overall the year before that. They had a lot of core pieces to that team. Obviously, they got some more later on. And now a lot of people will use the argument against Connor Bedard, saying that Sidney Crosby never had the greatest of line mates, but he did have Evgeny Malkin on his power play, did have Chris Letang on his blue line, he did have Marc-Andre Fleury in the net, and he also had a very deep team. Now, a lot of the reason they were good is because of Sidney Crosby, right? Like Chris Kunitz made the Olympic team because of Crosby. But at the same time, Sidney Crosby was a lot older than Bedard is right now. And I think it's kind of unfair because Sidney Crosby was legitimately the first generational player, right? Who was in this like social media era, right? So like Sidney Crosby was known at like 14. Obviously Wayne Gretzky was known at like 10, but you know, that was when everything was still in black and white, so it doesn't really count. However, I will say one thing. Connor McDavid, a lot of people will point to him next as he had no help. He has no help. McDavid got Draisaitl. They drafted, you know, Nail Yakupov, who didn't end up being anything. They drafted Taylor Hall, who they traded for Larson. They obviously drafted Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. And I'm not saying Connor McDavid didn't carry Zach Kassian and, you know, Alish Hemsky and these random players, right? Like to, you know, legitimate NHL contracts. He, you know, got Zach Hyman to be a 50-goal scorer. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins at 100 points. But at the same time, Connor McDavid, you know, did enter the league with Draisaitl. And he also, Connor McDavid is the best prospect we have ever seen on, like, Connor McDavid, it's not even close. Like, this Crosby was great. I didn't get to see Crosby, and the greatest prospect I've ever seen is Connor McDavid. That, like, I don't think Connor Bedard was ever on the McDavid best player of all time level, and I think he set a new standard for what generational means, which is why it is very skewed with how ridiculously successful Crosby's been, with how Ovi's broken Gretzky's goal record, with how McDavid is maybe the best, like, not the greatest player, but the best player of all time. It is like how people are saying McDavid's not in those conversations because he hasn't won a cup. If Connor McDavid never wins a cup, he is still the best player to ever play hockey, and he is still one of the top 5 greatest players of all time right now. Right now, at 28 or 27, whatever he is, he is in the top 5 greatest players of all time. Like, genuinely, I don't even think it's a debate at this point. He's ahead of Ovechkin, and Ovechkin has to be top 10. He's probably at his peak better than Sidney Crosby, and Crosby's top 5. So, I don't know. We're putting him in dangerous conversation. Maybe he's 6 because you put Gordie Howe, Crosby, or Lemieux, and somebody else. damn, I'm a dumbass, but like he's ahead of Messier in my opinion. He's ahead of Yager. Yager, you could make the argument of how ridiculous the Jaromir Yager was on so many different teams. But I don't know. I think just like the McDavid argument, like Bedard, people are saying he's not generational because of that sophomore slump. Connor Bedard was the first big draft pick of Chicago. Obviously, they got Korchinski. That was in a trade for Alex DeBrincat. In terms of their own tanking, since the Taves and Kane era, they landed the first. Like, I don't think they expected to land. I mean, they obviously expected it because it was rigged, but I don't think they expected it to land the first overall pick in the first year of their rebuild and get a generational player. Their roster was so decimate. That's why people didn't want Connor Bedard to go there, and it's shown. And for people who say Connor Bedard can't carry all like players, first of all, Ryan Donato scored 30 goals. Let's just start there. Ryan Donato scored 30 goals. If you predicted Ryan Donato to score 30 goals, you are capping your ass off, right? Jason Dickinson looked like, a third line, maybe second line center in the NHL last year. You know what I'm saying? There was times where he was playing with a guy like Colin Blackwell who made a name for himself, right? Like this is what Connor Bedard is at the like because of how early they got him in their rebuild and how much pressure is on this kid. Of course, he was bound to not live up to whatever expectation you had. We are comparing a 5'10" centerman to Connor McDavid, the best player we have seen and maybe the best player we will ever see touch a sheet of ice. And yet, Connor Bedard is probably never going to get to McDavid's level. But he's a generational player. I don't think it's a debate. When the team gets good, right? In the top 100 prospects, obviously that list was flawed by The Athletic. But, nevertheless, Artem Levshinov, Sam Rinzel, Kevin Korchinski on the blue line, Nick Lardis, right? There's a couple other guys I'm missing. Anton Frondell, obviously. Whoever they get in this next draft, whether it's Gavin McKenna, whether it's, Keaton, probably not Keaton Verhoff, like, whether it's freaking, I don't know, you know what I'm saying, like, Ryan Rubrock, Vijo Bork, Avar Stenberg, they are building something in Chicago. It is taking time, but that's how they know how to do it. They tanked for Kane, tanked for Taves, and those guys entered the league at the same time. Connor Bedard entered with nobody, absolutely nobody at all. And they got players who are way older, way less skilled. Obviously, Teravainen's really skilled, but he's not on, he's not going to help a generational player, And a lot of these guys, Crosby, McDavid, they do a lot of their damage 5-on-5, obviously, but a lot of, those top-end points, to rack up, those top-end 100-point seasons, you need a lethal power play. They traded Seth Jones. That doesn't help. They have Nick Foligno, Tyler Bertuzzi getting first-line power play time. Like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, we're talking about Connor Bedard not being generational when, like, obviously, he should make players better. And he made Ryan Donato a 30-goal scorer. Like, what are we talking about? There's a reason Ryan Donato only got $4 million, even though he scored 30 goals, because people think it was a fluke. Because he plays with Bedard. That's just like how it works. A couple of other things, obviously, he's starting in his own end a lot. The face-off is ridiculously bad, I will say. He really needs to improve there. But also, Connor Bedard in the World Juniors did not play center. He played the wing alongside Stankoven, who was doing a lot of the dirty work for him. Maybe that's a player he needs. Maybe he needs to move out to wing. Maybe Anton Frondell is going to be that guy who helps him. Obviously, Levshinov's going to play this year. Sam Rinzel is going to play this year. Korchinski's probably going to make the jump this year. They are getting infused with a lot of young talent. Frank Nazar, Oliver Moore. This team's good. Nick Lardis as well might, crack the NHL soon. Whoever they get in the 2026 draft, obviously they'll have more of a pull because this year they're going to be better, and they're Chicago. They're a nice big market with a successful franchise. And it took took Crosby 4 years. It took McDavid freaking like what? It took them 10 years since they drafted Draisaitl to get to the finals. I don't think it's a big deal. I think you guys are being way too harsh on Connor Bedard. His talent is otherworldly. Otherworldly. His shot is one of the best shots we have ever seen in the league. His playmaking is super underrated. As a dual threat who can get 50 and 50, that is ridiculous. 50 and 50 potential is something you don't sleep on. And whether Connor Bedard lives up to the generational name, I don't know. But he is definitely going to be the defining forward of this generation. Now, whether he's just a bridge gap until we find the next McDavid, the next Crosby, right? Maybe he's that guy in between the Gretzky and Crosby era, in between Lemieux and Crosby era. Like a Jaromir Jagr kind of player. Jaromir Jagr put up 2,000 points almost, right? That's a pretty darn good career. Blackhawks fans I've seen, they're not worried. They believe in this kid. I would too. If you're buying Connor Bedard stock, now is the time. It is the lowest it is ever going to be. Now, will Connor Bedard ever become the best player of all time like those expectations had it? No. And I think those expectations are because social media is more prevalent than it's ever been. Connor McDavid didn't have TikTok at that time. Connor Bedard, everybody's editing him on TikTok because the boys think he's sick. The girls like how he looks. Everybody loves Connor Bedard. And a lot of these older fans who live in their parents' basement, and Connor Bedard made more money at 14 years old than they did in their entire lifetime of working their job without a high school education, as they dropped out typing on their keyboard talking about how Connor Bedard sucks, right? You guys can't talk because you guys are growing impatient like Gen Z fans. You guys are thinking that this guy's washed because it's been 2 years. And you guys are comparing him to Connor McDavid. So be set up for failure when this kid is one of the best players, if not the best player in the NHL. And to finish this, this rant off, this unprofessional rant, you guys know my opinion. I think Connor Bedard is still generational. The hype is ridiculous. The skill is ridiculous. And the moment Gary Bettman gets out of the league, the shift from no skill, gritty, no tax teams to teams who actually play winning hockey with skilled players, with good players who are actually good at hockey. Once that switch comes and the Florida Panthers don't get the referees on their side anymore, we will look at Connor Bedard a lot differently once he's entering his prime. And we will look at the Chicago Blackhawks a lot differently because they're being patient. They're not taking any more swings at these average NHL players. They are waiting for the big fish. And one day or another, that big fish will come, whether he's in the pipeline, whether he's a draft pick, whether he's a free agent signing. And when Connor Bedard one day has that teammate alongside him, like Draisaitl, like Jagr, like Malkin, right? He already has a great decor behind him. Spencer Knight, right? Adam Guyan, right, in net. Drew Cosimo. On the forward core, they're building some good complementary pieces for a winning formula. Oliver Moore, great skater. Frank Nazar, great skater. Anton Frondell, great skater and big. Nick Lardis, point producer, right? I'm sure I'm missing a couple guys, but dude, Connor Bedard is generational. If you think he's not, then that's your opinion. Maybe you'll be right. It's too early to tell. And as a prospect, Connor Bedard is generational. As an NHL player, we'll have to see. Only time will tell. But for now, in my opinion, I'd recommend buying all the Connor Bedard stock and being patient, because there are people who invested in Google early on, lost a bit of money, but look how much they made in the end. So make sure you guys like and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.